Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Manchester is Red podcast, the Manchester Evening News. Is another of the midweek rough and ready podcast with myself, Rich Fay and Tyrone Marshall. Coming up on today's show, we'll discuss recent criticism of Marcus Rashford, lift the lid on the latest transfer rumours and take a look at the latest set of financial figures. Before we get into that though, Tyrone, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you, Rich. I'm good. Looking forward to week number 2 of this midweek podcast. See what rough and ready things we can dredge up this week.
And you've just had the bombshell about a minute before we started recording to realise we've both written the same piece for lunch as well, which is throwing your plans out the window.
It has, yeah. 600 weeks into that, and it turns out we have had the same idea and done essentially the same thing. So yeah, not ideal. So now we need to race through this podcast so I can try and rescue mine and do something slightly different, shall we say? But it does concern, I guess, what we're probably going to talk about fairly early on in this podcast.
Yeah, and that's what you want when you start a podcast, the fact that it's going to be rushed. That's the quality seal of approval we can promise you on this rough and ready podcast. Do stick with us. And yeah, first of all, we will look at United's latest financial figures. They have been announced on Wednesday morning. They dropped at 11 a.m. I will just read you through a few of these figures because we're not very good at the jargon, are we, Ty? We do our best to try and dissect it, but lots of it is just words that you might not quite understand. So headlines are United's record first quarter revenues are up by 9% at £157 million. They say it's reflecting the club's strong economic foundations. I will also note that these are the quarter one earnings from the 3 months to September the 30th, 2023. So they're always a little bit outdated, but they do obviously include much of last summer. United's record quarter revenues are down to record match day income, broadcasting income and commercial income. They've also seen record ticket sales, attendances and global membership, which is over 400,000 members. That is the largest paid membership in world sport. They also mentioned that there are new strong business partners on board. We're not going to be giving them plugs on here. Profitable, and United say they are profitable when excluding investment in players. However, there is still a net loss of £25.8 million, which includes investment in players, aka amortization. Employee expenses are up by 9.7% at £90 million due to higher wages in the Champions League and investment in players. Net capital expenditure and tangible assets rose 20%, amortization by 16.7%, and they are due to investment in players from last summer, so Mount, Onana, Højlund, etc. United have profit on disposal of tangible assets, which is up by 77%. Basically, United can sell players now, which has always been an issue in the past. Almost £30 million brought in profit from last summer in terms of selling players. That's Elanga, Fred, Henderson, still an area United really need to improve in. Net capital investment doubled to £9 million, including new facilities for the women's team and academy at Carrington. Revenue and earnings guidance lowered due to the exit from the Champions League. So Ty, I suppose from United's point of view, there's lots of positivity in there. They would probably argue that the reason they've still had that net loss is because of Champions League exit, which is going to have an impact. But, United are making strides in terms of their transfer policy, I suppose. A lot of money was spent, but it's a credit to the club that they are at least having those steps forward in terms of getting fees in for players that they sell now.
Yeah, I think my favourite bit of that has to be that United are profitable when excluding investments in players.
So not profitable?
Yeah, what does the success of your business revolve around? Investing in players. All right, okay, right. Yeah,
we are profitable when you don't count the losses. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Wow, imagine that on The Apprentice.
Yeah, if you don't count the money that we spend on players, which is normally overpaying them anyway, we're really profitable. We're a cracking business. If you just stop us spending on players, we're really successful at this.
We're a money-making machine.
We are a money-making machine. Yeah, we just throw it all away. Yeah, I mean, it's good news and bad news, I guess. It's record revenues again. They are, like I said, they are a money-making machine. Everything seems to be going up, apart from the goals scored and points tally column. Beyond that, everything is going up. They are a money-making machine. They are successful, but they lost money again. They lost £25 million in those 3 months. And the fact is, they don't really have that money to play with. We've just seen earlier this week the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules again coming down hard on Forest and Everton again. And it's no secret that United are pretty close with that. I did a piece and spoke to a few people after the Champions League exit, and the general consensus was that United had around £30 million to play with in terms of those profit and sustainability rules. I mean, 25 million of that 30 has gone. So it's very difficult to know now exactly what the position is. There was the rules basically state that you can afford to lose 105 million over 3 years, or as long as your owners put in 90 million of equity, which obviously the Glazers haven't. Jim Ratcliffe has now invested. Whether that counts or not, there seems to be some uncertainty at the back end of last year. So the picture is not clear at all. But United lost 150 million in 2020, 21, I think, or 21, 22. Can't remember which one. Might have been 21, 22. Obviously heavily influenced by COVID, but it was a massive loss, and it has set them back on the profit and sustainability rules. And this is why they say in every window that we can't do what we want, and we are tight on financial fair play. And losing 25 million in the first 3 months is only going to make it tighter on financial fair play. It's why they're signing no one in January. So it is good news that the revenues are going up, but it feels like it kind of sums up the state of Manchester United, that they have record revenues, yet have spent money so badly over the years that they just cannot spend it. They're making more money than ever before, but can't spend it. And that is kind of the problem of where they're at.
Yeah, it's been sort of the tale of them for the last decade, hasn't it? That you look at even people like Ed Woodward and the previous regime, you look at Richard Arnold, they were really good at growing United as a commercial venture. But in terms of growing them as a football club, they were bad at that. And that has sort of been United's identity for the last 10 years. That, look, if you are going to look at it from a business point of view strictly, yeah, they are doing some stuff right. Like they are still this behemoth, even when they're not doing well on the pitch. And, it's that famous Woodward quote, wasn't it? That what happens on the football pitch basically doesn't affect who we are as a business. And that is still the tale for United now, that, still playing catch up to try and change that identity. Again, Ty, I guess it sort of comes in neatly as well to what we were both talking about and both wrote about this lunchtime, which is sort of the youth transfer strategy as well. United have tried to be a bit smarter, with getting rid of players, at youth level, try and catch up where people like even Chelsea and Man City really still lead the way in terms of shifting on young players. And it's really important that, because effectively, due to these being academy players, it's hugely beneficial for the club to sell them, because it's basically pure profit. You don't invest much in these young players. Some of them will have a compensation fee. Some of them, like Hannibal, will have arrived for a transfer fee as well. But the majority of United's youngsters have been nurtured at the club. So there was no sort of expenditure financially in terms of their progress. So when you sell them, it's just pure profit. It's why City sold Cole Palmer in the summer. It's why Chelsea sold Mason Mount to United. It's why lots of teams look to sell their homegrown players. It's very perverse and counterintuitive almost that, look, you grow these players with a dream of them being in your first team, but the reality is it's probably better if you sell them on. And United have maybe in the past been a bit too protective of some of their homegrown players, kept hold of them for too long. But, even if you look at someone this summer, like Scott McTominay, he's a homegrown player. If you manage to sell him, then that is a lot of profit, surely, in terms of the way that the books are balanced. So, yeah, what have you made of United sort of restructure at youth level in particular, Ty? Do you think that they do need to be a bit more ruthless with getting rid of some of these young players? Because obviously, from a fan point of view, they will see all these young players leaving and wonder why they've not been given the chance.
Yeah, I think it is the right call. I mean, on McTominay, and I don't really have a lot to go off this, other than there was obvious interest, and United were considering selling him. But had Kobe Mainoo not got injured, I still think there's a pretty good chance we'd have seen McTominay sold in the summer, purely for those FFP reasons you mentioned. And it's all to do with that new footballing word, amortization, which no one can actually say. Like you say, in terms of pure profit being banked. If I used the example in the summer where if United sold McTominay for 40 million, it's 40 million straight away. It's 40 million in the profit. If they then had signed Amrabat for 20 million on a 4-year deal, it would only come up as 5 million this year. So you could have done that deal, and it looks on this year's results, it looks like £35 million profit, which is why it is so good, which is why you've got Chelsea considering selling Conor Gallagher this window, why Newcastle are talking about selling an academy player to fund their spending. I mean, you're right that the rules are perverse. Newcastle would happily spend £400 million in every window, I think, at the moment, but they just can't. And instead, they're saying we might have to sell someone like Sean Longstaff maybe, or Elliot Anderson to fund it. And it is, it is kind of strange in the rules that it's encouraging selling academy graduates, which is probably not where we want to be. But the alternative, I guess, is clubs putting themselves at risk. But in terms of United's approach, I think it's been really positive. I think there's an argument, depending on how things go for Ten Hag, and I don't think it's any secret now. I'm very much in the camp that I'm just not sure I can see him turning this around. But it might kind of be his legacy in a way, that he has delivered a good academy strategy, I think, in that he has set a high bar for players to get in the first team. But if they are good enough, he will play them. Garnacho, Mainu, these players are key, not squad members. They are key first team players now. And he has played them because they're good enough straight away. But he's also, so many of these players that have gone, including the two this month, Fernandes and Hannibal, are 20. And I don't think it's any surprise that we're seeing players reach that age where they need to be playing senior football, really. And if they're not good enough to do it at United, you may as well sell them. And in all of these deals, there tends to be a buyback and a sell-on built into it, giving United some protection to either bring the players back if they do kick on unbelievably, or if they do well without being quite good enough for United still, there's profit to be banked there from a sell-on. So, I think there's a lot of sense to it. I think a lot of other clubs do it as well. We've seen, the money City make from their academy is phenomenal, really. It's, their business model now, and obviously there's 115 charges against them to say that they've built this business model illegally, I guess. But the business model they've reached now is perfect. It is the best run club in the country as of now, because they make so much money from academy sales that they can fund those transfers every year. They're never going to get close to breaching these financial rules because of the success of that academy, and because everyone wants a City academy graduate, like everyone wants a United academy graduate in the 90s, because they come with that kind of feeling of like they'll bring something of pep with them when we sign them. And it's a great model for them now. And Liverpool have it to a degree, like selling Nico Williams 18 months ago for £17 million. It's an incredible model, and United are gradually getting there. They're not selling players for that level. I think it's fair to say that nobody looks at the United academy now and thinks, we'll have some of that mediocrity from the first team, please. It's not at that level anymore, but I think it is the right decision. I think Ten Hag's kind of being ruthless and pragmatic at the same time with it. These players, Hannibal, Fernandes, they're good. They're not good enough. I don't think anyone who's watched Hannibal this season for United thinks he's got a long-term future at United at the moment, and he's 20. So I think it's the right decision to make, and it does help balance the books.
It's one of those tricky ones, isn't it, where you've got to anticipate that different youngsters will progress at different speeds. Some will bloom early, some of them will take a little longer. But like you said, there comes a time when you realise some of these players are old in terms of what you'd expect from a youngster, because even in world football now, it's not become uncommon for sort of 16, 17-year-olds to start making their mark at first team level. You'd say sort of 18, 19-year-olds could be playing regular football now. You look at players, even sort of someone else we expect to leave on loan, Palestri. He's 22 now. He's played at the World Cup. He's played almost 20 games at international level, but he's just never had the chance, but he's never sort of kicked on at United. And 22 just isn't young anymore in the world of football, because you've got players who are 6 years younger who are sometimes getting those chances. You look at, is it Lamal at Barcelona? He was 16. I know there's exceptions to these, and it's always going to be, a bit different. Lamine Yamal, but that is the cutthroat nature of it. And United maybe need to be a bit more ruthless in that. And that kind of brings on to the elephant in the room, Ty, because there's been a lot of criticism of Marcus Rashford lately. His performance against Tottenham divided opinion again, because obviously there was a well-taken goal, but he maybe still did quite a lot of bad in the game. Even for the Højlund goal early on, he overran that attack. Yes, he dragged the ball forward. He still just looks to be lacking that confidence, that match sharpness. And again, if we're going to talk about players who are gradually getting older and older, he is now at an age where you'd expect him to be in his prime. 30 goals in all comps last season, just turned 26 years old. You'd still say the best is yet to come from Marcus Rashford, but is that best yet to come in the United shirt? Do you think there is an argument, given, as we said, the FFP? It would be a huge boost if you could sell him for a big fee this summer. How much could United expect to sell Rashford for in the current climate? And do you think he is a player who should be seen as dispensable.
I definitely think, in a way, every player should be seen as dispensable if they're no longer up to the standards. And it's hard to say that of Rashford because it was only last season that it did feel like he'd kind of made that major breakthrough to world-class level. And yet now we're back here and he's not scoring enough goals. I think his output has improved recently. I think that's four games in a row where he scored or assisted, and he is contributing more often. Like you say, he scored a good goal. I thought second half he was pretty poor on Saturday, and he just doesn't help himself at times. I don't understand the need to do that celebration when there's almost like at times there's no awareness from him of that he's not playing well. And I know he's since said it was to do with the post he left on Sancho's Instagram and criticism he got for that. But why is he getting involved in that? Why does he feel the need to get involved in that? He left a message for one of his friends to do well. I don't think any serious United fan, any serious person is looking at that and saying that's poor from Rashford. It's demented social media loons who are basically picking him up on that. Why is he then getting involved and celebrating that way in a match? It's just totally unnecessary. And he just doesn't need to do it, I don't think. And then getting involved on social media afterwards to explain himself, just celebrate the goal. I don't understand why he feels the need to make such a minor kind of inconsequential point, really. And there has to be an acceptance that the reason he's getting criticism this year is because he's not played very well. And, I think, I've criticised him for his form this year. The Sancho thing is just a total non-story for me. I just think it's a complete non-story.
Do you think it's also that element, though, now? We've got Sir Jim Ratcliffe arrived at the club, was there on Sunday. His whole sort of ethos has been returning United to what they once were. Obviously, he sees that they need to evolve, they need to be modern, they need to be a bit smart of the way they operate. But he's said, a record that he wants to have the best homegrown talent. He wants United to be the place where you've got, like they used to be, the best British players there and then a smattering of the best world-class talent as well. Would selling Rashford not sort of be hypocritical of his whole mission statement? Because this is still very much a player who I think is the poster boy of Manchester United. Look, he's a Wythenshawe lad. He's someone who's come through, done so much for the community, done so much for the UK, really, and given so much on and off the pitch for this club. He has reached a world-class level at United before. Yes, he's had some big dips afterwards and in between, but I just can't sort of see it. I just don't think I can even envisage in my head Rashford playing for any other team right now.
No, I can't really. And I don't know where he would go, really. PSG has been mentioned a lot when Mbappe goes.
I guess if PSG did get rid of... and if Mbappe leaves, then I guess is that the only one? Could you see...
maybe it's a possibility. But like I say, I can't see Ratcliffe's United considering it at the moment. I don't think it would be right to consider it as poorly, as averagely as he's played this year. He was phenomenal last season. I don't think it's fair to now deride that as the one-off season, as the season that was kind of a fluke, as kind of some people have suggested. I don't think that's fair. I think he can reach that level again. I'm not sure he's always going to be a 30-goal a season player. I think there's a degree of inconsistency in his game that maybe is always going to be there, but he's not alone with that in terms of his scoring. He's always been a streaky player, hasn't he? A confidence player, and when he's on it, like he was last season, those finishes go in. And when they don't, they can go anywhere, and you can visibly see him lose his confidence. And I think part of it with Rashford is a body language issue, which in a way isn't really his fault. It's just kind of who he is. But his head does drop on the pitch at times. You see his shoulders slump, things go against him, and I think that can rile fans, especially when things aren't going well. But I don't think we're anywhere near the point where he goes. And like I say, his output certainly recently has improved. I thought he took his goal really well at Forest. There is clear signs of improvement there. He needs to do it more consistently. But I do just think these kind of issues he gets involved in and drags himself into are just totally unnecessary. That celebration was completely unnecessary because people are always going to interpret it as I've been criticised and that shut the critics off. Well, it hasn't. You have to accept that this team has been awful this season and you've been a part of it. And that goes for every single one of those players. You have to accept that. And I don't, and fair enough, the celebration wasn't about that. But the thing it was about is just so inconsequential and so minor that I just do not see why he's felt the need to make an issue of it. And it needs to be just a case of head down and focus on the football. Forget about this kind of thing. It's just totally unnecessary. You know, he left a positive message for a mate, and regardless of what's happened to Sancho at United, I just think it's a total non-story, and I don't understand why, like I say, why he got involved in it. But I don't think we're anywhere near the point where we're talking about the potential for him to leave United yet.
Join us after the short break. We'll talk about the future of Erik ten Hag and Jose Mourinho. Welcome back to the Manchester is Red midweek podcast. Myself, Rich Fay and Tyrone Marshall. We mentioned there, just before the break, Ten Hag and Jose Mourinho. We talked about non-stories. Do we even entertain the possibility of Jose ever coming back to Old Trafford? He's been sacked by Roma. Being sacked by a club doesn't always sort of tee you up to go and take another job, does it? Does that not spell that there's a big problem there?
Well, it does, but it never seemed to have affected Mourinho before. I mean, a European club will be mad enough to go and appoint him. There's no doubt about it. He is, for me, he is a busted flush at the highest level. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But someone will be crazy enough to go and appoint him. But it ain't going to be United. I don't think it would even be Newcastle. But I'm sure there will be someone. I mean, the funny thing is for Roma, he obviously won. Did they win the Europa League? I can't remember if they won the Europa League or not now. I don't think they did they?
They got to the Europa League final, the first European final in a certain amount of years.
They won the Conference League.
Oh yeah, they won the Conference League. It was their first title in 14 years, I believe. Good in cup competitions, but poor in the league.
Yeah, and a very winnable league. I mean, there's been 4 different champions in 4 years. During that time, I think Roma have spent a fair amount of money for Serie A. They've got a decent wage bill, and they should have been doing better, and they just weren't. And he was, I think he was worshipped by the fans there. But I think that is classic Mourinho in a way, that he knows the politics of the situation and how to play that game and how to win over those fans. But his record in the Rome derby was desperately poor. I think and the Conference League, yeah, good trophy, a great achievement, worthy of a tattoo. But it's not. There just wasn't the consistency there, and I don't see it at the highest level in Europe anymore. I mean, he's not done it for a long time now, but I'm sure there's a job out there for him somewhere. But whatever happens to Ten Hag, it just ain't going to be United, is it?
No, it would be, if Sir Jim Ratcliffe's first sort of power move at Old Trafford was to bring back Jose, then you'd be very, very alarmed for Manchester United's future, wouldn't you? Yeah, he had his chance. He wasn't good enough. Yes, there were issues off the pitch, and yes, you might say that, look, under the previous regime, any manager was destined to fail. There's certainly a track record that backs that up. But that doesn't mean that Mourinho is blameless and faultless for his time at Old Trafford either. And you only have to look and see the chaos that's followed him in his previous 2 jobs to know that there were wider issues at play. And he cannot just be this person who's just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or, he obviously has to take the accountability for that. We've spoken as well about Ten Hag's future, haven't we? Quite a bit. I just can't really see anything changing immediately on that until maybe United were categorically out of the FA Cup, categorically couldn't qualify for the Champions League. Obviously, the draw of Tottenham's not helped their hopes of even getting a top 5 finish and that sort of loophole back into Europe's elite competition. But the FA Cup tie, it'll be Newport County away. They've got their temporary stand. Wrexham play there this weekend. We'll have the temporary stand ourselves. But yeah, Newport's a very winnable game, isn't it? I know they've got this pedigree of causing a few upsets in recent years, but they are not even the team that they once were in that regard. So you'd definitely be backing United to get into round 5, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, they're 17th in League 2. They've got to be easy pickings for United. I've actually went there with City a few years ago. City beat them, I think it was 2-1 or 3-1. It was a pretty close game in the end. Yeah, that was, I didn't expect when I started this job to be covering City and United at Newport County, it would be fair to say. I was hoping at least Eastleigh might provide something different. I mean, when we went with Newport, there was nowhere near enough room in the press box. And we were sat basically in the stand in an overflow area with laptop on your knee, and it was pretty rudimentary working conditions. And, I know we're in danger here of journalists complaining about going to games and then in the standards we get, but it's it's the FA Cup. It's unique. You've got to embrace it. But at least Easter would have been something different. Newport been there, done that. But yeah, United have got to win it, really. They've got to go on a cup run now. It's the only thing really they've got to play for. I just don't see them having anywhere near enough to challenge for top four. And I think the concern has got to be that they go backwards, really. The next league game is Wolves away. I think that's going to be really difficult. Wolves are playing very well at the moment. United aren't. And if they lose that, Wolves will be within. And
of course, Wolves should have beaten United on the first day of the season. Never mind, got a point. They were by far the better team. They were robbed of a penalty in the last seconds of the game.
That was the day, the opening day of the season. And that was at a point when everyone was fit, really, before Ten Hag was bringing up the injuries as an excuse. And that's
my concern, Ty, for United, is that we keep on pointing to this injury situation saying, well, Casemiro will be back, Martinez will be back. Casemiro was dreadful before his injury. Martinez was poor, but I think he's in a dysfunctional team, so I'll give him some more lenience. But United have been bad when they've had close to a fully fit squad already this season. So I just don't buy this. Everyone's coming back. United are back, baby. It's going to be fine. I just do not buy that whatsoever.
I totally agree. And I think, Ten Hag has clearly started mentioning the injuries more over the last month. I think when he said earlier this month that the injured players coming back would be like 5 or 6 new signings in January, I think that's the kind of statement that basically puts him kind of on notice. If that's the case, he needs to bring about an improvement, and we're not seeing it so far. And I look at Sunday's game and I see one team who've had 23 games under a manager, have had loads of injuries, constantly played the same way, no matter who's in the team, have a clear structure, a clear approach, a clear plan to score goals. And I look at another team who've had 92 games under a manager and have no identity whatsoever, absolutely none. And I thought, you were at the game on Sunday, I was at City on Saturday, so I watched it on telly, and I thought Gary Neville actually made a really good point and said it quite well in the second half when he said, these United players get the ball and they don't know what the next pass is. It's almost like it's not coached into them. There's no structure to their play. It's get the ball and then look up, right, who's free, where's a pass, where's an option. And you look at Tottenham and they don't need to look up. They know where the runners are. They know what the plan is, what the structure is, what the identity is, what the philosophy is. And I just don't see that with Ten Hag United. And I know there's been injuries, and undoubtedly they have had an impact. Of course they have. And not just the long-term ones, the constant nature of them, the fact he hasn't been able to field this settled side. But, I've never known a season like it for injuries. Every club has had, or it feels like almost every club has had major injury issues this year. Tottenham have had it. Newcastle have had it probably worse than United. Plenty of other teams have had it. And a lot of them, and I think Tottenham are the example. I mean, I think Postecoglou this year is a nightmare for Ten Hag, because what he has done in a short space of time at Tottenham, having lost Harry Kane in the summer with all those injuries and suspensions, doesn't reflect well on Ten Hag. It just can't. It can't reflect well on him, because you've got a manager there who has quickly built clear identity into a team. And I don't know what United is under Ten Hag. And I don't believe there's really a regular match going out. Come on here and say, this is what we see every week. This is how they plan to score a goal. Because I don't know how they plan to score a goal beyond this hope of being a counter-attacking team. But it's just not going to work. They need to get over this obsession with the counter-attack. It's not a solution to be a great team anymore. There needs to be more to it than that. And in possession,
it is the fact they've regressed to Solskjaer style already, isn't it? They spent £400 million more. They regressed to Solskjaer tactics and Solskjaer's best players, and Maguire and McTominay are having to sort of get you through it. And yeah, it's not sustainable. Go Ty.
This won't go down well with a lot of fans. I get that Ten Hag's got a lot of backing, and I understand why, because he's got a lot of credit in the bank from last season. I think he's done some really good things as United manager. We mentioned the academy, the discipline he's brought in. He's made that office the most important office in the club again. I think he has done some important things. But watching them on Sunday, I was left thinking arguably it was worse than Solskjaer, because tactically, because at least Solskjaer had an obvious plan of what it was and this counter-attacking idea. But it's like United have just fallen back on that. That was always what Solskjaer wanted to do. I don't think that is what Ten Hag wanted to do. I think it's just kind of what it's fallen back on. And I do think that, I'm of the view now, I'd love to be proven wrong and that he does turn it round. But I'm just not sure I can see it from here, because it's not the results that are the major issue for me. It's the performances. And I just, I used to cover a manager at Burnley and Sean Dyche who had some terrible catchphrases, but he used to always talk about a future in performances, as you kind of do when you're bottom of the league. Results won't always go for you, but you need to see a future in performances. And I look at United's performances and I just see no future in them. That is not gonna get you anywhere. Those performances, and unless things change drastically, then it's going to become an issue for Ten Hag. And I think that Wolves game's quite important, actually, because they've only got Newport between now and then. They've got 2 weeks off building into Newport, then Wolves away. That is a long time on the training ground to come up with a tactical plan. And if they go to Wolves and again look like a team without a plan, I think you've got to ask questions of the manager and what's going on there.
Sean Dyche to Old Trafford, you heard it here first then on the Manchester Rough and Ready podcast in midweek. Also, if you want to get more on sort of United's wider changes, Samuel has done a piece today. Sir Dave Brailsford is sounding out former staff at Manchester United as the Ineos group prepare to make sweeping changes at the club. One source has described the situation as brutal, potentially, in terms of the amount of changes we could see from United. They want to be ruthless. They want to make these tough calls. If you want the latest on that, that is on the MEN website. And also, I need to give a plug. Samuel Luckhurst's newsletter is 50% off right now. You get part of the deal. The link is in the description below. For just £20 for an entire year in a special January transfer window sale, you'll get even more exclusive views and insight into what is actually going on at Old Trafford. You'll be supporting some quality journalism and you'll be getting exclusive insight into the club, so you can become a full subscriber and join the Inside Old Trafford community with 50% off an annual subscription. Now, that deal runs until the 1st of February. Like we said, there is a link in the description below. Welcome back then to part 3 of the Manchester is Rough and Ready podcast. Transfers, Ty. You have to talk transfers. Starting here, João Neves, Benfica, name-checked United in a statement saying that the reporting on that has been incessant. Reminds me of when United went for Bruno Fernandes and United were quick to try and play down any links of him and then ended up signing him in the January window. Like we said, the financial situation means United will not be spending big this month unless something hugely unexpected happens in terms of getting that sort of cash injection from a player sale or whatever. So yeah, João Neves, Benfica have released a club statement that name checks United. That is always a sign that, look, calm down. There might be a lot of gossip going around at the moment, but United are skint. We all know that. They need to get rid of players. We've mentioned the youngsters leaving. Hannibal off to Sevilla. Alvaro Fernandez is off to Benfica. Both loans with the option of becoming permanent. United would have sell-on clauses and buyback clauses should both of those become permanent transfers in the summer. Facundo Pellistri also expected to join Granada for the second half of the season. Remains to be seen if that will include a future fee as well. But like we said, he's 22. I think there is a growing acceptance that Facundo Pellistri is probably not going to be that guy for United, not just because Ahmad's back from injury, but Garnacho is the right winger at the moment. So Pellistri is effectively 4th choice on the right wing. So what's the point? I know Anthony's a bigger issue than both Ahmad and Pellistri, but again, Pellistri might even be one of those that can be almost categorised as a youth team signing. I know they paid quite a substantial fee for him, but they just need to get rid of some of these who are on the fringe. In terms of looking further ahead, Ty, like we said, if United are going to do any business this month, it will be your Weghorst, your Sabitzer style sort of players, very low fees and low expectations really. But looking ahead to the summer, that's probably the more interesting one, isn't it? I mean, Anthony Marshall expected to leave. The jury's still out on Højlund. He has 2-2 in the Premier League. He also has 2-16 in the Premier League. Depends how you want to look at it. He needs some support up front. How much support does he need? I did a piece on this yesterday, looking at the different categories of sort of strikers you could go for. You could go for someone like a Benzema, someone who's in that Cavani, Ibrahimovic mould, a short-term fix that can bring experience, alleviate the issues. You could go for someone who's young. We've seen Xerxes linked with a move this week. We've seen Evan Ferguson, a player they're very keen on long-term, would cost a lot of money, but would that scupper the development of Højlund? And then you look at someone who's already in their prime. Osimhen, Mbappe, both expected to leave this summer. Do United have the pulling power to bring either of them to the club? You're laughing.
No, I'm not second.
And then you look at Premier League. Then you have Premier League proven players. You've got Watkins, Toney, Solanke, all would come in and do a job for United, but they'd cost a huge amount of money because they are Premier League proven and these teams don't have to sell. It's just a really interesting one, isn't it? Because they've already banked big on Højlund. Surely they can't be giving up on him already.
No, what United need is Højlund to finish this season really well and make it very clear that he is the long-term number 9. And then it makes it easier to know what striker they need in the summer. And that is someone relatively experienced, but who just provides a bit of competition, a bit of backup, can maybe play out wide as well. What you don't need is Højlund, only scoring another 2 Premier League goals, say, and suddenly you're in the market thinking, have we got enough, essentially? United need the answer on Højlund by the end of the season to be, he's the man. He's the long-term prospect here, the long-term player, and we just need to sign a backup. And that will make it easier financially as well. And, I think we're seeing signs that he is getting there. Obviously, the goal was great on Sunday. I thought that the one moment for me that was arguably better than the goal was the backheel flick against Mickey van der Ven, and then the speed to go past van der Ven and put that cross in, which I think almost reached Garnacho. That was absolutely superb. I mean, van der Ven has been brilliant for Tottenham this season. He's so fast that he essentially allows them to play that really high line. And Højlund just totally did him. And you see the goal. I still think the best goal he scored this season was his second against Galatasaray, when he was so quick breaking clear from halfway, and then that composure to dink the finish. And there are clear signs there that this is a player, but United need a 20-goal-a-season striker, and they need it to be Højlund, really. You mentioned Ferguson there. I think he looks a great player, but there's no point in signing Evan Ferguson a year after signing Rasmus Højlund. I don't see it. I don't see that United can sign a striker in that same age bracket. I think it's got to be someone 26, 27 or older now who's kind of got a bit of experience but can be a backup. I don't know who exactly, but that's not my job. But I think that's the area you've got to be looking at. Because the other issue here is that United probably aren't going to get in the Champions League. We've just spoken at the start of this podcast about how tight they are with FFP. You have another year without Champions League revenue, possibly another year without any European revenue. And it becomes...
United have historically always spent more, haven't they, though? When they've not qualified for the Champions League.
They can't. That's the problem here. And that's why these rules... And I'm going to be fascinated to see where these rules go, because they do feel really tight. And obviously 2 clubs have fallen foul of them, or 3, I guess, if you include Everton twice. And I do wonder where they're going to go. The funny thing is that I think United need them and would want them. What United don't want is Newcastle given free rein to spend what they want. Chelsea and City given the same sort of thing. I mean, it matters less with City now, but Chelsea to be given the free rein to do the same sort of thing. United's model, even under Ineos, isn't we can spend 400 million a summer. It is we need to get ourselves into a better financial position, get that 150 million loss from a few years ago off the FFP book, past the 3-year cycle, and we can spend our revenues. If every club is spending what they earn, United are in a good position because they earn more than virtually everyone else. What they don't want is going back to a free-for-all. So as bad as it is for them at the moment, I think long-term the rules do benefit them. But if they were to finish 8th or 9th, it reduces what they've got to spend massively, I think. And then it makes it even harder to get back in the Champions League. So the risks of dropping out of the Champions League, I think, are higher than they've ever been for United and for any club, really. Because once that happens, probably the same with Newcastle this year, and we can see with what Newcastle have been saying over the past week or 10 days, how desperate they are to spend. And obviously, I think their loss was 73 million for the year. And they've clearly got the funds to spend as much as they want, really, but they just can't. And if they don't get back in the Champions League, which looks pretty likely, it makes it even harder for them. So it is going to be an interesting summer. And the last thing United need is to be looking at Højlund and say he's only scored 4 or 5 Premier League goals and wondering if they've made the right decision. They desperately need Højlund to finish this season in the form he's in now and make it absolutely clear that long term he is their number 9.
Seen lots of links as well lately, haven't we, with Michael Olise, Crystal Palace. I mean, obviously a player who's had interest. I think both Man City and United have both sort of admired him in the past, and he's certainly one of these players who, again, Premier League proven, he's got that pedigree. I know there's the suggestion of United would be open to a swap deal involving Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Well, of course they would, because they like Olise, and Wan-Bissaka's a player they're open to getting rid of. So they're always really easy sort of links to make. How many swap deals can you remember in the history of football? Not many. They're always very good to sort of nice hypotheses, aren't they, to sort of pitch and say, we could get rid of him and bring him in and it was only cost us this amount of money. It's just one of those sort of, whenever you see these Twitter accounts who are like, here's my hypothetical transfer window. We sell Maguire for £150 million. We buy Mbappe on a free. Then we get this guy in, we get this guy in. United are fixed. It's that easy. It doesn't bloody work that way, does it? So Olise, I do think United would have worth in bringing these sort of Premier League proven players into the squad if possible. But again, we've seen in the past that it doesn't always work that way. It doesn't always matter unless you've got a clear plan for them to sort of settle. And I guess, Ty, the final real point for us to discuss is that, isn't it, that we can pitch all these players as transfers, and the last two windows, the players we said United should go and sign, they have signed. You know, they wanted Martinez. I know they wanted other option before that, but Ten Hag wanted Martinez, he got him. He wanted Anthony, he got him. He didn't want Casemiro, but they got him, and he's still a very good player to have. Mason Mount was their number one choice. They've had all these players, and United have had a pretty good track record of getting players that they want in, but it still hasn't worked. And I guess heading into this summer, that is maybe the warning, isn't it? That even if United identify someone as this number one target, do all their background checks, it doesn't mean they're going to work out.
No, it doesn't. And there's never a guarantee, is there, on transfers? And we've seen a lot at United that don't work out. And we've seen some, it felt like a year ago we were talking about Ten Hag's record in the transfer market being phenomenal. Now we talk about it being very hit and miss. So it shows how quickly these things can change. Obviously, the jury is out this summer. I think Mason Mount essentially just has to start again. Onana's looking a lot better than he was. I think he's starting to make an impact now, but there's never any guarantee really, no matter what sort of money you spend, and that is the risk really. And no matter what Ineos change, no matter how much due diligence they bring to it, and obviously you can try and put processes in place to make it as safe as possible, but there is always a risk that the transfers will go wrong. And if you are in a situation where you don't have that much money to spend this summer, the problem is that you can't really afford a dud. And if United do miss out on the Champions League, I think they will need to have a near perfect summer to be in a position to get back into it next year.
Yeah, we shall see what happens. And of course, you can stick with us at the Manchester Evening News for all the latest transfer news and all the latest as well on FFP, on those profit and sustainability rules, and on Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos's arrival at Old Trafford. So, if you've not already, subscribe, leave a 5-star review, which we're obliged to say a 5-star review. Maybe some 4 stars in there. Make it look like it's not fixed. Do whatever you want to do. Just give us an honest appraisal of the podcast this week. We will be back on Friday afternoon, Samuel and Steven, to follow up on today's show with the latest at Old Trafford and bring you all the latest on transfers as well. Thank you very much. Take care, and we'll see you again next time.